much too complex, too complex, much too complex, too complex, too complex, too complex.
Good afternoon. My name is James K. Holder II. Some of you may know me as Sir James II, and I'd like to welcome you back to Not on My Watch. As always, I'd like to ask you to subscribe, like, comment, and share. I want you to retweet this and repeat this. It's very important that you continue to subscribe. I did release the audio podcast of this. It's on, right now it's on SoundCloud. I'm getting feedback and kind of learning what people's preferences are. Some people are saying they want it on iTunes instead. So bear with me for a couple weeks until I figure that whole thing out. But I do post the link to whatever the audio podcast is at the bottom of this video in the description. So if you're looking for just the audio, it's at the bottom of the description text in this video, however you're viewing it. If you're watching this, it is Wednesday, May 17th, 2017. And for some reason, Donald J. Trump is still the president of the United States. So I'm kind of flummoxed by this, right? Because in the past week, since the firing of James Comey, the former director of the FBI, we have seen just sort of revelations. Things are coming out. You have memos from Comey talking about Donald Trump's asking him to not only drop the Flynn investigation, but to also jail reporters and journalists who leak information that condemns Trump. Now, it's interesting because Donald Trump himself benefited greatly from the leaking of information. And this wasn't even leaking of public information. This was stolen private information via WikiLeaks, via Julian Assange, via, who else was involved in this? Obviously, Russia was involved in this campaign, and that's what this entire investigation revolves around. So this episode is only going to seek to explain why Donald Trump is still president and who we can't look to make that change happen a reality for us. So that being said, there's four ways out of this. There's four ways out of this situation for the American people. Three of them are peaceful ways. And so I want to focus on those three because obviously we don't support any, violent coups occurring in the United States or anywhere else in the world. But the first would be for Donald Trump to resign. The second would possibly be for a criminal proceeding. Like if Donald Trump essentially became indicted and was convicted of crimes associated with really anything just egregious, he would then no longer be able to serve as president of the United States. And then we have a congressional impeachment, which is the decision made by our lawmakers. And so I kind of want to focus on those three options as, if those are the ways out, why have none of those three worked so far? One, the resignation resides, the responsibility of a resignation from Donald Trump relies on Donald Trump having the humility to resign. You'd have to have this man really have an awakening, some epiphany where he realized that he is a serious, contentious danger to the people of this country. But that would also warrant him caring about the people of this country, which I don't believe he does. I think all of that information was clear before he took office. I think his motivations to take office were for self-aggrandizement, personal enrichment, and the enrichment of his family. And so because of those things, I think Donald Trump really has no material benefit in ever resigning. There would be no reason for him to, from his point of view, or really anyone else's, for him to relinquish the power of being the president, because even though after 118 days he's been president, he hasn't passed any major legislation, he hasn't been able to get anything really done, he still has the ability to cause harm, to threaten people. He has weight behind what he can do, and he can exploit that power to enrich himself and enrich his family. So if you're asking me, do I believe option one, which is a Trump resignation on his own will, would ever happen? I don't believe that. I don't believe that we're going to see a Richard Nixon type resignation once the pressure starts to mount. I feel like over the course of the entire primary, we saw so much condemnation of Donald Trump's behavior from all these people who are supposed to be reasonable Americans. But ultimately, everyone sort of laid down and accepted it. Everyone accepted the bigotry. They accepted the sexual assault of women. They accepted the alleged child rape allegations. They accepted the bankruptcies. They accepted the stiffing the subcontractors on his construction projects. Everyone accepted all of these things, these groups of people who voted for him. And I believe, don't quote me wrong on this, but I believe it was like 65%, between 63 and 65% of white men still voted for Donald Trump in light of all of these egregious atrocities that were uncovered during the primary. So it's kind of like in the actual election. So it's really difficult to suggest that Trump would face enough pressure from the public or his base that would make him have this come to God moment and say, you know what, all of the stuff that I've done over the last 70 years of my life was wrong. I apologize for it, and I'm going to fix it now by resigning from the office of the president. I don't think that's going to happen. So let's take that one off the table. The other two, again, as we discussed, the next one would be criminal proceedings. And that would be left to 4 specific individuals who had the power to do that. And so I might as well go ahead and tell you the title of this episode. I generally don't name these before I post them. But the title of this episode is called 10 White Men, ... who aren't going to save you from Donald Trump. And the reason why I have to specify that it's white men is because, again, a very strong majority of white men voted to elect Donald Trump. So we have to realize that if we're looking at a path to impeachment, we have to rely on the resistance. And the face of the resistance is simply not white men. But over the course of the conversations and everything that comes up in the political sphere and the media is this whole, oh my God, I can't believe that didn't work. Surely these people will change their mind. Surely this will cause... And I have to tell you that I've been sort of... what is the word? Jaded for a very long time with American politics, but I still participate because you have to. But at the end of the day, I'm not counting on any of these people to save us from this man. Because at some point or the other, they each had an opportunity singularly within their own means as an individual to stop this, and they chose not to. Given their opportunities and their access, they chose not to do anything. So this list of 10 people is the people who you should not be looking forward for salvation. Let's start at the top. Jefferson Beauregard Sessions. Now, I've said this in my We Must Protect the Vote episode of this podcast. I believe it was episode 3, where, and it's the one with the yellow background where it's just me and the chair and the yellow background. It's the only one that looks different. This man has been placed here to singularly and significantly contract America's voting rights. This is in an attempt to ensure that not only does Donald Trump get reelected in 2020, but also to make sure that subsequent elections have the same effect because of significant voter suppression, significant voter intimidation, and that also you have the same effect building up into 2018. Now, over the weekend, we saw that there was a ruling by the Supreme Court, which is tainted by Neil Gorsuch, but it's just kind of where they decided not to hear a case in North Carolina, which would overrule the anti-voting voter ID law. So essentially, it is still on the books that it's illegal to have a voter ID set up in North Carolina. But the problem is that the path and the trajectory of voting rights culture in this country is established by many of the executive orders set by Donald Trump, many of the policies enforced by Jefferson Beauregard Sessions in order to really squash the movement and the impacts of the browning of the United States of America. One example I was giving earlier this week was that what people don't understand is the connection between ICE agents and the immigration, the deportation force that has been set up in this country by Jeff Sessions and Donald Trump. Take the wall out of it. It's not even about the wall because we know that net immigration to this country had been zero for years. So we're not worried about new people coming in and then rigging our elections with illegal votes. What we're worried about is the intimidation of voters who have the right to vote in this country being scared off. 2 weeks ago, we met with the executive director of the New Georgia Project, Nsé Ufot, and she explained about the procedures and the process of registering new voters, a lot of which has to do with, in the state of Georgia specifically, you have to knock on doors and you have to ask people for their driver's license number. Even if I send you to the mvp.sos.ga.gov page where you can register to vote, you still have to have a driver's license, a valid driver's license, or a state-issued ID to be able to register to vote on that platform. And so because someone isn't undocumented, it's very common to expect that if someone's going to be undocumented, they're probably living with someone who has documents and who is a citizen of, a documented citizen of the United States. Now, what does that mean? That means if I, as a stranger, come knocking on your door asking you to register to vote, and there are three adults living in this house, two of them have Georgia-issued IDs or driver's licenses, and one does not, it would be incumbent upon you to be wary of me if I might ask or wonder why this third person doesn't have documentation, why this third person doesn't have an ID. It probably means that that person is an undocumented American. And therefore, it puts your entire household at risk by even participating in that registration process. So that is another form of suppressing the vote that many people are just sort of ignoring. Jefferson Beauregard Sessions will not save America. And we know that. That's very obvious, but I decided to put him first to just get it out of the way. He has enacted an incredible assault on the voting rights of all Americans in this country. And we have to be mindful that the longer that Donald Trump remains in office, the longer that Jefferson Beauregard Sessions remains in office. Now, mind you, this man lied under oath to get that position and was still voted on by many of the remaining people on this list. And so we have to be careful because there's so many voices that keep emerging on this side, on both sides of the aisle, that say, oh, we're not ready for impeachment. We need more information. We need to let this we need to let this settle. Let's get all the ducks in a row. But you can't give Donald Trump space, because space is enough for him to do damage and figure out another path. And even if he's not completely forestalling or completely preventing an impeachment, he ultimately is biding time to do something else, to do more damage, to get more done, to really grift our nation of resources for his own family's personal enrichment. And it's significant. So that has to be acknowledged. Moving on along, the Deputy Attorney General, who should be in charge of these things, but really isn't, because Jeff Sessions has claimed that he recused himself from Trump-Russia hearings and Michael Flynn, but he really hasn't. He's still overreaching, and he's still making suggestions, and he's still involved. So Rod Rosenstein would be the next person that I would say is not going to save us. Given the opportunity to appoint an independent prosecutor, he has not. Despite cries, despite all the calls for this from the American public, from all of the Democratic, House and Senate members, this person, who is supposed to be an independent body, has not taken steps to do this. So he's kind of painted himself as a yes man and someone who really is just not going to be supportive in us. Mike Pence, obviously, is someone who is within this executive sphere who, given the opportunities to stop this, chose not to. Mike Pence continually, his only objective, it seems, has been to paint himself as a non-party to Trump-Russia collusion. In the event that Trump is eventually impeached or resigns, that he would be able to take over that spot. And so that is the hard part with Mike Pence and the reason why he can't be trusted. This man obviously is a part of the Trump administration, but even beyond that, this person has his own significant series of goals to inflict upon the American people that could only really happen with the situation that we have now, where you have control of the House and Senate that may go along with things that Mike Pence would want to promote. The fourth on my list, and this is not in any particular order, but I kind of chopped it up in terms of like how it's segmented between what these people's positions are. Jim Comey. Now, everybody wants to think Jim Comey is this hero, and I've said this many times before on this program and also on Twitter. Jim Comey is not going to save us. Yes, Jim Comey, because he's not incompetent, left a paper trail of the times that Donald Trump asked him to dismiss the Flynn trial, the times that Donald Trump asked him to arrest journalists who report on leaks that condemn Donald Trump. But at the end of the day, why did it take you being fired for this stuff to come to light? Yes, I understand that you want to build an entire case, but for God's sakes, in the time that Donald Trump has been president, we've witnessed just yesterday, California, LA of all places, as liberal as LA is, passed this legislation to give convicted police officers basically the right to choose their own juries. It gives them unprecedented leeway to determine what the futures are that they have in facing criminal justice proceedings when they've been convicted of misconduct. We have the ICE raids that are just ripping families apart. We have the House passing of, or House repealing of ACA that we know will take health care or health access and insurance from at least 24 million Americans in the next, 10 years. So let's talk about it. How much time do we really have? And the problem I have with this let's bide our time issue is that the people on this list, all white men, are biding their time. Oh, let's make a bigger case. Let's make a better case. Let's make a better case. But in the interim, people of color, women's rights are all being jeopardized as we wait for this onslaught, as you wait for this more information. What more do you need? What would it take, honestly, for you to get off your ass and say, this is what we need to do. Get his ass out of office. So, Jim Comey, yes, great. You're doing some work. You're providing some breadcrumbs for us to get this motherfucker out of office. So excuse my language. But you also are the person who put him in office. Let's be real. You're the one who gave a letter just before the election to, of all people, Jason Chaffetz, who's next on my list of white men who aren't going to save us from Donald Trump, the access and power to then promote the idea that Hillary Clinton was still under investigation. Even though knowing at that time that Donald Trump himself was under investigation. You didn't make that public. I'll never trust Jim Comey. He's not going to save us. Sorry. He had many opportunities if he had sat and done nothing, we would have been saved. And yet, that's not what he chose to do. So I don't trust Jim Comey. Let's move on along. Jason Chaffetz. I don't know whether he's coming or going. Because at this point, as things unfold, he's not here nor there. It's like, are you resigning? Are you still in office? Are you not there? Are you going to... There were talks that he was the next in line to replace Jim Comey so that he can now focus more time on Hillary Clinton's email probe. All of yesterday, Tuesday, Fox News is literally covering stories of Vince Foster and Hillary Clinton's emails and the Clinton Foundation. They're literally gearing up and trying to stoke their audience to gain support for a subsequent FBI agent or subsequent investigative body to now focus on those issues as opposed to Donald Trump's collusion with Russia. And it's really unspeakable. Now, we all know Jason Chaffetz falls into the impeachment category of what the options are. The previous four fell into the criminal investigation possibility of getting rid of Donald Trump. Now we've moved on to impeachment, and so we're talking about a congressional action. Jason Chaffetz, as the head of the House Oversight Committee, he could subpoena all of Comey's memos. If he chose to, probably won't. Let's move on to Speaker Ryan, Eddie Munster. This man is so focused on gutting Medicare and Medicaid and getting rid of all protections for health care for some reason that he wouldn't care if Lucifer himself were president. He would go along with it if that man, if whoever was president, would sign legislation to repeal Obamacare. Paul Ryan would go along with it. So we know that an impeachment proceeding will have to begin in the House. Speaker Ryan is the Speaker of the House. He runs that body of our legislative body. Not counting on him to take any action. I mean, as far as Ryan got to rejecting Trump was saying when he thought Donald Trump was going to lose the election that he's not encouraging people. He was leaving it up to people in Congress to decide whether they were going to support Donald Trump or not. He wasn't encouraging people to support Donald Trump, which still suggests to me that Speaker Ryan is not complicit in all the Russia dealings. I don't believe Speaker Ryan knew about it because he's one of the few people who wasn't forcing everybody to be on board behind Donald Trump. Speaker Ryan didn't do that. But Ryan is complicit in the sense that he'll go along with whatever. He is really just an empty suit at this point. There are many other people who fall into that category. I would say Ted Cruz and, Rafael Cruz and also Marco Rubio, but they're not white, so they didn't make it on this list. Moving right along to the Senate. Mitch McConnell. Now, we already know this man is the biggest obstructor of justice as it is because he already completely rigged our entire Supreme Court. He rigged an entire branch of our government with his power by blocking Barack Obama's appointment of Merrick Garland after the death of Justice Antonin Scalia. So now are we really looking at this man to be fair and objective? He is still calling for no independent investigation into Russia. Now, we talked about it earlier in terms of the criminal proceedings. That's just a position that Mitch McConnell could take. He could call for a vote or legislative action on that to call for a vote for an independent. That isn't happening. And so I just believe that this man is in place to keep the ball rolling the way that it is. Inertia is in effect. He is not going to stop anything. And he's also gained material benefit from keeping Trump in that position. His wife got a position on Trump's cabinet. So McConnell is completely complicit. Let's look at John McCain. Now, I'm going to do these two together because John McCain and Lindsey Graham frequently come up as two people who are the reasonable minds, the cool heads of the Republican Party, but they're really not. These two people, given the opportunity, have saved themselves. And that's all they aspire to do. Both represent, John McCain had a hard-fought, race to get in office. In all of that time, he refused to condemn Donald Trump. He refused to, I don't remember that McCain ever unendorsed Donald Trump. He went along with everything. He went along with the Supreme Court justice nomination. He went along with Jefferson Beauregard Sessions, and so did Lindsey Graham. Even last week, when Sally Yates went up for testimony, Lindsey Graham was trying to steer the conversation to leaks and not confront the real issue of Donald Trump collusion, not confront the real issues around Michael Flynn. I mean, they know unequivocally that Michael Flynn is like a real smoking gun here. They know that the Michael Flynn link is the one that is going to take them down. and there's nowhere else to turn. They can't blame it on Barack Obama. Barack Obama warned Donald Trump specifically. They can't blame it on Sally Yates. Sally Yates warned the White House specifically, and then she was fired. And so you can't, they've tried to undermine and delegitimize everyone who has tried to bring highlight to the Flynn connection and the Flynn collusion link, but it's not working. But why is it that John McCain and Lindsey Graham are still obfuscating this point? You know, you got Lindsey Graham, Lindsey Graham who called for Comey to meet with the Senate panel. And Comey's like, I'm not meeting with y'all behind closed doors. Comey, to his credit, is saying, I'll testify in public, but that's the only thing. So we need to get that rolling. On their own, again, I'm trying to highlight to you that these are people. If John McCain, as a former candidate for president of the United States, had come out forcefully enough against Donald Trump, he could have prevented a Donald Trump nomination. He could have. He's someone who had earned the nomination for the party before. He could have tried. He really didn't try. He was in his own election year, and therefore he wasn't willing to sacrifice himself against the party or ruffle any feathers. He wanted to cover his own ass. That's where we are with this group of guys. And so that's 9 of the 10. And the 10th and final is Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders is one of the 10 people who we should not rely on to impeach Donald Trump. I'm not counting on it. From the beginning, Bernie Sanders had many, many, many opportunities over the course of 2016 to help elect Hillary Clinton. He was asleep at the wheel. You could say that was intentional. You could say it wasn't. As soon as Donald Trump was elected, instead of the resistance, Bernie Sanders went along with the, oh, well, I'm willing to work with Trump narrative. You heard from Bernie Sanders, oh, I'll listen to Jeff Sessions before his appointment. He just has not taken a hardline stance of the resistance. Bernie Sanders is not a part of the resistance, and neither is any of the alt-left movement. Much of what you see on the alt-left is a group of people who claim to be for progressive policies, women's reproductive rights, criminal justice reform, increased minimum wage. But at the end of the day, when it comes down to putting the pedal to the metal on these issues, they are asleep at the wheel at every turn. Even you would think that they would be welcoming of Onward Together, which is Hillary Clinton's new PAC for the resistance, and promoting groups that are a part of such. You would think there would be support from Bernie Sanders' camp, but no. There's just been, the same voices, the assholes of the left, who have just been attacking Hillary Clinton, saying she's only out to take your money. They don't say anything that, what's his name? Michael Moore just signed a deal to release a film called Fahrenheit 11/9. And I'm just kind of like, Michael Moore, you had a material benefit in electing Donald Trump. That's why you released your little Trumpland movie in Ohio before the election, when you could have just been telling people that they need to vote for Hillary Clinton, and you chose not to do that. So, again, let's talk about all the white men who are not the face of the resistance. There is too much delay in this. And I specifically bring up Bernie Sanders because just last night, there was a town hall with John Kasich, another loser, and Bernie Sanders, who, and during this town hall, John Kasich was, of course, asked about the news of the day that does Donald Trump's calling for Jim Comey to drop the Flynn investigation, is it time for impeachment? And John Kasich says no. Who the fuck says no at this point? Excuse my language. John Kasich does. And then you've got Bernie Sanders doubling down on that position, saying, oh yeah, I don't think it's time yet. When is enough enough? I used the analogy earlier that an impeachment is like a divorce. But really, we need an annulment on this whole thing. I don't even want an impeachment. I want an annulment. I want a nullification of this entire presidency, of this entire administration. And I've never been married, but, at the point when you decide it's not going to work, You got to get the hell out. When you know this isn't working in the right direction, you need to make steps to hurry up and get out. Because the thing about it is, if you're still married to this person, and this is an analogy now, that person is still a threat to you. This person, if you're married to somebody who hates your guts and you think is dangerous, they beat you, they do all this other stuff, they steal your money, they do all this other stuff, you essentially are at their mercy. If you get into a car wreck and you're unconscious or you need to be resuscitated, the hospital is going to ask them what to do for you. You cannot remain in these toxic type situations. That's why everyone calling to wait for more information, let's bide our time, let's figure it out, as ICE agents are threatening families and deporting people, as the threat of our health care and insurance is in jeopardy, as we're looking at the beginnings of the downturn of our economy, as we've seen Trump grift thousands of dollars. And it's kind of like there's people who have a benefit to Trump being in office. Bernie Sanders is one of them. I mean, as long as he can complain about what Democrats are doing wrong and what Donald Trump is doing, he can keep asking for money for our revolution. And I don't have anything against super PACs. I mean, I guess my thing is, if you have run an entire campaign that you hate super PACs, you probably shouldn't own one, but like Bernie Sanders does with our revolution. But fine, it is what it is. That's where we are. But let's be clear. You are benefiting materially from Donald Trump being in office. And the longer that he's in office, the longer you can continue to make the claim that you should have been president, that you would have won. Because you don't want the truth to come out about Russia collusion. You don't want the truth to come out that your misinformed supporters, who you helped to misinform and misguide to your own benefit, were then taken captive by Russian propaganda to lead us to this result. That's not the story that you want on the books. So you're going to avoid the impeachment proceeding. And so, again, just to recap, the 10 white men who are not going to save us from Donald Trump: Jeff Sessions, Rod Rosenstein, Jim Comey, Mike Pence, Speaker Ryan, Jason Chaffetz, Mitch McConnell, John McCain, Lindsey Graham, and Bernie Sanders. I can't say it enough. People of color, women, we are in danger now. Our rights are already in jeopardy. We have already seen ramifications of this administration. We cannot continue to wait. We have to end this now. And so I'm calling on all of you to redirect your focus away from these voices that are telling you that it's not the right time, because it's past time to do something about this. Donald Trump should not be president of the United States. And everything that we can do within our power to make that, to end his reign, we got to do that immediately. We cannot wait till 2018, because we are on a path that is going to restrict the voting rights of every person of color in this country. This is aided by Jefferson Beauregard Sessions. The longer Donald Trump is president of the United States, the weaker our democracy becomes. And I believe that we're going to face a point, an intersection at 2018, where we realize that our opportunity to take back the House and then reach an impeachment proceeding quorum in the House, that opportunity will have been missed, because so many voting rights will be gone by then. So much gerrymandering will be gone by then. So many court cases will have been overturned by then. We can't wait. We cannot wait. This has to happen now. So I implore you to just take action now, whatever that might be, whether it's voting in a local election, whether it is protesting in the March for the Truth, whatever it is, we have to do this now. We cannot wait. We cannot wait. And you have to consider the source of the people telling you that we should wait a little longer for this to get more information. Because I'm telling you now, if we wait until 2018, we're going to lose. Because we will have lost so much ground in that time. We will have given Trump so much access in that amount of time that we cannot do this. We have to do this now. That being said, as always, I'd like to thank our friends of the show. This week there were many contributors, and I just thank you so much for supporting the show with your donations. Of course, if you donate $1 to the link below, paypal.me/JKH2, it will help me buy coffee for the show. If you donate more than $1, it'll help me buy more coffee for the show, or invest in other significant improvements to the set, or to the audio equipment, or the equipment that I need to export the show on time, or whatever it is. So I just thank you all so much for your support, and I pray that you continue to support me in this effort. Friends of the show for this week: Chad A. of Enfield, Connecticut, Gabriel D. That's my little Michelle Obama dance of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. You've been very supportive over the weeks. You support every week. Thank you so much. Deborah G. of San Francisco, California. Catherine B. of Baltimore, Maryland. What's up, Catherine? Angela L. of Albuquerque, New Mexico. And of course, I had to hit you with the Bugs Bunny reference on Twitter because, yeah, every time I hear Albuquerque, it's all about Bugs Bunny not making that left at Albuquerque. And that's all I know that town for. Barry G. of Long Island, New York. Thank you, Barry. Joshua Z. of Elkins Park, Pennsylvania. And also Stacy R. So if you'd like to become a friend of the show and receive a thank you on the cast, you can donate $1 or more at any point in time. As long as it's by midnight on the Tuesday before the show, you will be acknowledged. And of course, the names are listed in the information below. So again, thank you so much for watching. And as always, I'd like to ask you to relax, relate, and resist. Thanks.
Too complex.